right, I think we have a quorum, so we can get,
Awful far apart.
Yeah.
I can't even.
Made like 23 million
it's 9 a.m., so
on the taxes.
Ray went out and put a
Sounded
a
good.
parking lot permit on his car, so he has little faith that we won't be out of here in 2 hours. So I think we can get out of here in 2 hours. So welcome, everybody. Good morning. I'd like to welcome and ask for the roll call.
Mr. Palacios? Here. Mr. Bernal?
Mark Dettel for Mr. Bernal.
Mr. Montoya? Mr. Goldstein?
Here.
Mr. Baumann?
Nick Chulos for Lou Bauman.
Mr. Corpus?
I know he stepped out, so
Did he-
he is here.
Mr. McCarthy? Mr. Harvey? Mr. Long?
Here.
Mr. Espinoza?
Yeah, he is here.
And Chair Mendez?
Here. Thank you. So at this point, I'd like to move on to consideration of late additions or deletions to the consent and regular agenda. Board? Anyone from staff?
I don't show any revisions for
Okay.
today.
Thank you. Next item, oral communications for items not on the agenda. Any member of the public? Okay, hearing none. I'd like to bring it back to consent agenda. Approval of minutes from the September 6th, 2017 Policy Board meeting. Entertain a motion?
I'll second. I wasn't present, but I've reviewed the minutes.
Okay. Been moving second. Any discussion?
So it says policy board, but it should be.
No, it should be operations board.
Board.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that catch. So with that change, and for the record, Ben Harvey just showed up. So there's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Regular agenda, item number 5, CEO's report. Mr. Habashi?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to update you on what we are doing on the staffing. I'm going to ask Sean to step up and give us that report.
Sure. Good morning, Board of Directors. Glad to see you. We have been busy since our last meeting where you all took a look at and approved the package of HR policies and organization chart. Since that time, MBCP has retained Bryce Consulting out of Sacramento. Bryce has experience with community choice placements and recruitments, as well as Cynthia Jordan, who is a local HR consultant in the area who has been tasked with helping us identify local candidates and drum up interest in applying for the various positions. Both Bryce and Cynthia are under subcontract to Lean Energy US for this particular project, and we are involved as well. We have, since we last met, if you would advance just one slide, thank you so much. Since we last met, we have posted for 7 positions, which were all in the org chart that you all approved at our last meeting. You can see them there. Bryce Consulting and Lean Energy have been engaged in targeted postings throughout the state of California to the list of organizations that you can see there, and Cynthia has been working through her regional channels to, as I said, recruit people to post for the positions. We have had very good response for all of the positions. There were a few that we're trying to kind of focus on right now, but for the most part, we've had good, robust response. These positions will remain open until we find the right candidate, and interviews are scheduled to begin next Tuesday, and if we need to carry on and do additional interviews from there, we will. Tom, is there anything you'd like to add on that?
No, that covers it.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Very good. Thank you.
Next is reporting on the banking and the credit arrangement. We had a little bit of a glitch that caused a little bit of a delay. about a couple of weeks worth of, but at this point, everything seems to be in order, and we will be ready to re-sign the loan document. That's likely to happen over the next couple of weeks, and I'm certainly still holding on to November 1st to have the loans be in order, and when that happens, we'll be able to shift all the contracts that Santa Cruz signed on behalf of the agency to the agency, and eventually, when we pay off the loan, we'll be able to pay Santa Cruz for the advances that we got from them over the last few months. Any questions?
Any questions for Tom? Thank you.
Next, to report on the request for offers. As you are aware, we have two different RFOs out in the marketplace. One is a long-term in conjunction working with Silicon Valley Clean Energy for somewhere between 50 to 700 gigawatt hours. If we are able to go together, we will be able to meet about 10% of our demand requirement, and that agreement is likely to be somewhere between 15 to 20 years. The offers are expected to arrive this Friday. Next week, I'm going to be traveling to the Silicon Valley and sitting down with those folks to sift through all the offers and narrow it down to a few that we can negotiate with. Expectations are sometime around late December or January, we'll be able to sign some contracts for long-term agreements. We do have another RFO out for short-term supplies, and that will be to meet 100% of 2018 demand, 80% of 2019, 65% of 2020, and 50% of 2021. We are expecting the offers to be arriving early next week, and we will again go through them and narrow the field down. These are going to be indicative offers, so we're not going to know exactly how much the final offers would look like. So we'll go through them and hopefully get somewhere between 5 to 7 suppliers, and we will do enabling agreements with them sometime in November or December. Then again, early January, we'll be locking in some agreements with those folks. Any questions on the RFOs or the process that we're going to go through?
Any questions from the board?
So, Tom, can you give us a range in terms of what those acquisitions might be in terms of the cost, expenses?
Obviously, for 2018, it will be different because we're only doing partial year. If I remember correctly, we may be looking for the short term, that is probably around 80, and that's the high end, $80 million. Then obviously it will be higher than that in 2019 and beyond. But since we're not buying 100%, then you multiply by a factor of 0.8 or 0.65, and that's will be the dollar figure. When we all set, and if we buy 100% for full load in a full obligation year, we're probably looking at somewhere between $175 to $200 million worth of power acquisition on an annual basis.
Those would be for long-term?
Whether it's long-term or short-term,
Okay,
we should be looking at around spending a couple of $100 million every year on power supplies.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Tom? Hearing none. Continue.
The marketing and outreach report, you have the report in front of you, and I believe Bill is here and will be happy to answer any questions if you have it. If you have any. Bill, you have a couple of words to say about it?
Just that we're very excited that the website is live.
Next slide, Laurel.
Yeah, we'll give you a little preview of that. So I encourage everybody to go to that site, take a peek around. As noted in the packet, it's considered a soft launch, so we wanted to, as quickly as possible, get the site up, and we will continue to layer in additional information in the weeks ahead, including some background materials that we'll port over from the old site, such as the feasibility study that got us to where we are today, and some other information. So I encourage everybody to send any feedback to Tom, and if there are things that need to be adjusted, we would be happy to do that.
Any questions or feedback? Jamie?
Are we getting any hits on people signing in with their email address to get information on that, on the site?
It's been live for a couple of days, and I don't think that we have received any email signups in that time, but we certainly have from the old site.
Take care of that right now.
What's that?
I'll take care of that right
Okay,
now.
good. Else?
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
One more item to report on, Mr. Chairman. We have attempted to schedule a workshop with the two boards as well as the alternates. So we were looking for 44. We sent invitations to 44 people to attend the workshop. We've tried several times, and the best we could do, and that's for one of the Saturdays in November, and the best we could do is really get about 11 people out of the 44 to say yes, and many said no, and many didn't respond at all. We think this is an important workshop that we want to get as many of you as we possibly can. So it sounds like November is out, and obviously December would not be a good month to do this. So we're going to make an attempt again to try to do this in January. So expect to be receiving one of those doodle invitations to see if we can bring as many of you as possible. Please share that. We really need to have that workshop with everybody because we all need to get on the same page when it comes to definitional issues like what's renewable, what's eligible renewable, what's carbon free, and how we buy resources and how we will move it from supply to demand. So I would suggest that please talk to your alternates and talk to the council members or the supervisors in your cities or counties, and I encourage you all to, or as many of you as possible, to sign up for one of those days. Again, we're going to send you an invitation for all 4 Saturdays in January, and hopefully we'll find one that will be more suitable for most. And with that, Mr. Chairman, concludes my.
Jamie?
Yes.
I would just make a pitch to give us some midweek alternatives as well and see if you get better attendance. And at least for those of us with young families, I know that weekends can be problematic. So
To the extent that you're willing to put about 4 to 6 hours on a weekday, by all means, we'll find a few days where you're not likely to be having a city council member, or a city council meeting or a board meeting. Sure, we can find a few days, a few alternate days, and plug them in there.
I was going to make the same suggestion. It was problematic because you had on Veterans Day weekend. Many of us had Veterans Day activities. Then you had on Thanksgiving Day the weekend, and so it just didn't work. But I agree. If you could do some midweek options, I think you may get more people.
Sure, happy to.
Before asking the public if we have any comments for conversation, we've been trying to do one retreat for both boards.
Joint retreat, joint workshop.
Okay. I think that's going to be a heavy lift. I don't know what the discussion here with the board of having 2 separate. I know it's more work for staff. I understand that, but whether it might be more sense to have 2 separate meetings.
We can give it a shot for January, and if it is becoming obvious that 2 separate meetings is the preferred way to go, then we'll do it that way.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Before moving on to item number 6, is there any member of the public that wishes to give any feedback on the CEO's report? Okay, great. Hearing none, I would like to move on to item number 6, authorize CEO to negotiate and execute a contract for data management call center services. Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We there are two functions that are going to be very important as we move into operation side. And for each function, we will need to have a vendor working with us for the long term. One is the data management, and the other one is power scheduling. We already have an RFO out for the power scheduling, and we're expecting to get results soon. For the data management, we already put an RFO out or RFP out a while back, and we got responses from 3 different vendors. We looked at the offers that we got and eventually selected one that we want to negotiate with. We are already in negotiations with them. The data management function is obviously is the most important one that we have because it is the one that controls the revenue movement from PG&E to us. There's data that has to be moving from PG&E to our vendor, back from our vendor to PG&E. PG&E then decide how much money they will push into our account. Then the vendor will look at what they've done, make sure that they provide the proper oversight to make sure that we get all the money that we need to get. The company that we have selected has been working with Pacific Gas and Electric, Southern California, Edison, San Diego Gas and Electric to do shadow billing. So in a sense, they have all the information that PG&E has on the customers when it comes to billing. They have all that already because what they do is they get all that information, they run the bills again to make sure that the bills that PG&E have ran in their system are correct. Then they advise PG&E as to what went well and what didn't. Because of that, they have a leg up on the other vendors that bid on this RFP. Also, their price was the least expensive one, comparable to the one of the ones that we didn't select, but the one we didn't select really didn't have that kind of input or into the PG&E system as GridX does. So we have at least some understanding of what the terms that we're going to negotiate with them on. We do need to move fairly quickly to get the agreement in place because those guys will require at least 4 months to get everything ready to go by the time we have our launch ready, which is March 1st. So we need to, definitely by November 1st, we need to have that agreement in place. And that's what we're asking you today to authorize me to negotiate and execute the agreement with those guys to the extent that it goes through, to the extent that it does everything that we need it to do. And of course, Dana will have the opportunity to review it as to form. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I conclude my remarks and be happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Tom? Mr. Corpus?
Tom, how was the $1 per customer meter arrived at? Will not exceed $1. Is that just a standard that you?
Yeah, the way it has worked for all the other CCAs in the past, with the one company that's working with all of them, with the exception of one, is they basically bid on $1 per customer, and for the one for Silicon Valley Clean Energy, for example, that is $1.10. And for others, it started at $1.35. And the company that's been working with the other CCAs have used that approach in order to bid on providing the service. And the other 2 companies that joined him this time around also use the same approach, which is $1 per customer per month. The $1 per customer per month is obviously lower than what Silicon Valley did and what all the other CCAs have done. But there's something else that in the works with those guys. There's 2 approaches to do in data management. One is called bill ready and one is called rate ready. Everybody in the past have used the bill ready, and the bill ready, the way it works is PG&E pushes the information to the vendor multiplies that by the rates that we're going to provide them, then they push the information back to PG&E, who bills the customer, gets the money, and electronically pushes it into our bank. That's how the bill ready works. With the rate ready, we give PG&E our rates, then they do all the calculations for the billing. They bill the customer, they get the money, they push it into our bank. Then our vendor just provides the oversight to make sure that PG&E have indeed billed the correct amount and is giving us the money that are due us. The rate ready approach is a little cheaper for the vendor. And so what we are doing with this vendor more specifically is we are likely to start with the bill ready approach and do that for about a year, then shift into a rate ready. And when we do that, the price will drop by at least 25%, from $1 to maybe 75 or even 70 cents. So I hope I answered your question and maybe a little bit more than what you were asking for, I think.
And the term 4 years is,
it's reasonable. Most of them usually ask for 5. I think 4 is sufficient because there's a lot of money that they have to spend up front, and they don't collect for it, but they collect for it over time with that $1 per customer per month. So you need to give them something more than a year or two.
my last question, Mr. Chair, is where's the home base for GridX?
Oh, they, I believe, are in Milpitas. Did I get that right?
They're in the Bay Area.
They're in the Bay Area. A little closer to the one that is doing it now for a lot of other CCAs. Their home base is in San Diego.
Jamie, then Carlos.
So I know you touched on it briefly, but Calpine, I understand, is pursuant to the staff report, is providing services to other CCAs. Can you explain what it was about GridX's, other than the, maybe it's just cost or location, but what factors led you to provide the recommendation for GridX versus Calpine?
Well, one is obviously cost. Two is they already have all the information. They have a system that's built to bring all the information from PG&E as well as the other investor-owned utilities and run a mock bill. So they have the capacity already in place to handle the work that will be coming at them. But most importantly, the Calpine was reluctant to provide a discount of any sort in case we wanted to go to the rate ready option. They've been doing the bill ready for quite some time, and they kind of formed the system around it. And in order for them to do rate ready, that probably would be additional work for less money that they would expect. So in their proposal, they were basically told us that it will cost the same thing for rate ready or bill ready. Either way we go, they will still charge us a higher amount than even the bill ready that we got from GridX. That's why I was reluctant to award them that bid.
And presumably, this is a different path than you took with Silicon Valley then?
Yes, it is.
Did you receive different proposals then here than you did in Silicon Valley?
In Silicon Valley, two things didn't exist. One, PG&E's, by the way, and this is probably another reason why it's prompted me to go with the rate ready option in a year from now. PG&E in the past had two different rates that they charge. For the bill ready, they charge something like 40 cents, more give or take. And for the rate ready, they charged somewhere around $1.50. So everybody said, well, why should I take the rate ready when the bill ready, obviously, even with the money that we're going to pay the vendor, is going to be cheaper. So everybody pretty much ignored the rate ready option and went for the bill ready. PG&E have now changed this year their rate ready option to make it match their bill ready option as far as what they're charging. So they dropped that significantly. And to the extent that we're going to pay the same amount of money to PG&E, going with the rate ready option with the vendor is going to save us, quite a bit, 25, maybe 30 cents per customer per month. So that was, one motivation or one thing that is happening now that didn't happen when I was looking at the Silicon Valley clean energy options. And the other thing, of course, is GridX was not playing in our market. They have just finally decided this is a viable market that they can make some money off it. And I think in the past they didn't play in that market because they had all the big ones. They were doing all that work for the large investor-owned utilities. They really didn't need to try to aggravate PG&E and Southern California Edison by working with us. They finally realized that this is really not going to be any aggravation to PG&E. It's probably going to be a good thing for them. It will make things a little bit more accurate, and so they decided to play in our market. And for these two reasons, that's why I decided to make a shift.
Thank you.
Sure.
Carlos?
Yes, I had a couple of questions. One, I just want to confirm that in the recommendation, it will be approved also by the Board Council. That's a given, I'm assuming. Just
You mean
the attorney?
Oh, that's what I said. Dana will see the agreement.
Okay, I didn't catch
and
that.
make
I'm
sure
sorry.
that of course.
Second question is on the recommendation number 3, specification of reasonable financial assurances. Could you discuss those again in detail, the reasonable assurances to be posted by GridX?
Yeah, because will be maybe the first or the second, because by the way, GridX is also the one that was selected by East Bay Community Energy to be the is it not community? So, okay, well, at least that's what I've been told. They are negotiating with GridX as well. I didn't know it's a secret. Sorry, Sean. Because of that, they're new to the market, and we only have 4 months to get ready. We need assurance that they're going to be ready. They obviously gave us that verbal assurance, clearly saying, definitely we're going to be ready. 4 months is good. It's going to be a little tight, but we're going to be ready by March 1st. But just in case they're not ready by March 1st, and for whatever the reason is, we end up slipping by a few days or a couple of weeks, that is a dollar amount to us that we will end up losing. And that's why we need some assurance in the contract that will basically say that if you are delayed on delivering beyond that date, beyond the March 1st, then you will incur financial penalties.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, hearing none. Any member of the public wishes to address the board on this item? Okay, thank you. Bringing it back to the board for action.
Staff recommendation.
Second.
Second. It's been moved in second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, vote carries unanimously. All right. I think we're moving on to our closed session agenda. Conference of Real Property Negotiator. Thank you, everybody.